It is the Locked On Chargers, Locked On Commanders crossover, and Jayden Daniels is back this week. Will it be him getting the win in a homecoming, or the Chargers proving they can win without their stars?
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers, Locked On Commanders crossover episode. I'm your host, Daniel Wade from Locked On Chargers, and we also have David Harrison, the host of Locked On Commanders. As always, it's your team every day, and we have a big one on Sunday in SoFi. Very excited for this matchup. This is one that I had circled on the calendar even before the season as a good test for the Chargers to be able to show they could beat good teams this year. And now that they have Jayden Daniels back, it feels like it's much more of a test for them, even though, Marcus Mariota obviously held things down. But very excited for this matchup, Jayden Daniels versus Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert had a lot of hype after his rookie season. Jayden Daniels also did as well, and now they get to face off against each other. David, we don't get to talk much, man. Super excited to have you on today for this big matchup.
No, absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to it too. It'll be my second time in SoFi, but my first time in Chargers SoFi. I don't know if that really matters, but it'll be. I'm going to check it off the block as a new stadium anyway, since it'll be the Chargers version of SoFi. And then man, Jayden Daniels homecoming. Less than 100 miles away from where he played high school football, and he's got a stadium named after him and all that stuff. So it's going to be a really exciting week for the Commanders.
Very exciting, and obviously very exciting for this crossover episode and crossover Thursdays presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. We talked a little bit before the show, David, that last week when Marcus Mariota had to start for Jayden Daniels, that I was like, yeah, but Jayden Daniels will definitely be back, of course, in time to play the Chargers next week. And you told me he was not going to miss this one. This is, obviously, you said it. He has a stadium named after him in California. And I'm sure you are ready to have Jayden Daniels back for this big-time matchup, too.
Yeah, look, man, Marcus Mariota does a lot of good things, right? And I think that if you look at the two games that he had to step in for Jayden while he was nursing that knee injury, you can see that this is a fully capable quarterback, NFL quarterback, veteran, sees the field really, really well. But Jayden Daniels just brings that little extra something, right? He's just a little bit extra dynamic, a little bit extra explosive, has a little bit more juice to him, where it just really has a lot of fun playing the game. I mean, he's a guy that, as recent as week one, Brian Burns of the New York Giants, after the game, he said he talks too much on the field. Like, he just needs to play the game. Like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to meet you. I don't want to be your friend. Just do your job, and we'll talk after the game, type of thing. But that's what Jayden does, man. He just plays with that kind of an energy and does those kinds of things. From my understanding, the last game he played in the Los Angeles area was actually Arizona State against UCLA. They beat UCLA. He did suffer an injury in that game. I am a Sun Devil grad myself, and I know Jayden's, his history and his departure from Arizona State wasn't all that great, but I support Jayden Daniels because we all love talking about winning football, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a fan or not. You just want to talk winning football. So I'm excited to see him back and excited to see him go home. He might have like a quarter of the stadium, just his people and people from San Bernardino coming out to come see him play. But the good news is medically cleared by the doctors to play this weekend, full participant in practice on Wednesday. We expect him to be full Thursday and Friday as well, on his way to being active on Sunday. However, that is not officially official yet. It's just the expectation.
Yeah, I would be, shocked at this point, even if it's not totally official, if he's not out there. That'd be pretty shocking. Like you said, I don't think he thinks he's going to miss this one. I don't think he will. And it wouldn't be Chargers luck if he didn't play, right? They have to get every team's best shot, even if that best shot is Jackson Dart. But I think it is also kind of a lesson the Chargers can learn from the Jayden Daniels of it all, which is basically just that if you don't protect your quarterback and you start letting him take a bunch of hits, even if he's still out there going into week 5, he won't be out there very long, right? And that's been like the hard thing the last couple of weeks. It's like, even in the Broncos game, like, that was borderline godlike, that Justin Herbert brought them back, the way that they were pressuring him, the amount of hits that he's taken. I think it's close to 40 hits he's taken over the past 3 weeks. And I think the test for the Chargers this week is just, can the Chargers beat a good team without their stars? Because technically speaking, Joe Alt is doubtful this week already, per head coach Jim Harbaugh. I'm going to tell you, it's 0.000 something % chance that he plays this week. There's probably a higher chance that he ends up on injured reserve this week more than he actually plays this week. So got to go into it assuming that. And I think for the Chargers going into the season last year, the Jim Harbaugh effect was kind of taking care of business against the bad teams, right? The only playoff team that they beat last year was the Broncos, who they beat twice, but they went 2-5 against every other team that made the playoffs last year. And they beat pretty much all of the easy teams except for the Cardinals that were on their schedule. Now, they just lost one of those games last week, one of those take care of business games last week, and it's because of all their guys they're missing. I mean, you're missing Rashawn Slater and Khalil Mack and Joe Alt going into this one. And I think the biggest kind of lingering question is if Mekhi Becton will play. So he was back at practice on Wednesday, which is great news for the Chargers. The Chargers also had Jamari Sawyer out practicing as their left tackle. Jamari Sawyer was their starting right guard last week as the Chargers kind of shuffled things up. But I do think that with a potential Joe Alt to IR situation brewing, and with the Chargers playing the Commanders, the Dolphins, the Vikings, and the Colts over the next 4 weeks, and a potential, Joe Alt absence, like they need to show something this week. Both teams need to bounce back. Both teams coming off of a loss, but the Chargers especially have to show, hey, we can rally with the guys that we have, and even if it's a good team, we can go beat them. Because I'll tell you this, David, if they can't beat good teams without the guys they're missing and no one really having an impending return anytime soon, you're going to go from 3-0 in the top of your division to kind of, a way different situation pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, look, these are the types of games that, when you look back on it, if you have a successful season, you look back at some of these games as kind of the catalyst for that, right? Because the silver lining to all these situations, you have the opportunities for guys that maybe don't usually get this amount of work to get out there and get this amount of work and maybe get some development and show some things that you otherwise, wouldn't have seen. For the Commanders, it's guys like Luke McCaffrey, who, came into the offseason really kind of hyped up. The coaches were really excited about his growth in year two. Coming into the season, but then we didn't really see that flash as much in training camp or in the preseason, and people got kind of down about him. And he's behind Terry McLaurin, Noah Brown, Deebo Samuel at a minimum. And there were people wondering if Virginia Tech rookie receiver Jalen Lane was going to jump over Luke McCaffrey on the depth chart as well. But then Terry gets injured, Noah Brown gets injured, and obviously now you got Deebo, Jalen, and Luke all getting work and getting reps. And Luke has been able to respond with 2 games. In 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games, 1 in each of the last 2 games, really being able to step up, really been able to flex his special teams ability as well. And so same thing kind of goes to the Commanders. If the Commanders are going to be this competitive team, one, the Atlanta Falcons are a team that you kind of expect them to beat. Obviously, they dropped the ball on that one, and I've been hearing from a lot of Commanders fans, this is 2 weeks in a row now. Last week against the Atlanta Falcons, after getting embarrassed by the Carolina Panthers. Now this week, the Los Angeles Chargers, after getting embarrassed by the New York Giants, in the sense that you shouldn't lose to the New York Giants. And so it's like, this is just our luck, quote unquote, to face these 2 teams. But I keep reminding people, the Washington Commanders just got embarrassed as well. And not because the Falcons are just such a terrible team that you should never lose to them, especially on the road, but it's the way that they lost. You know what I mean? Marcus Mariota and that banged up offense, where your number 2 receiver is your number 1, and really your number 4 receiver is your number 2, they still go out there and put 27 points up on the road. You put 27 points up on the road against anybody in the league, and you should be competitive. And they only lost by 1 possession, but the side of the ball that is the healthiest, not that they're completely healthy, but the healthiest, is the one that faltered. And that's the frustrating part. That's the embarrassing part. So going to Los Angeles, Daniel, if Chargers fans want to go back and watch these Commanders games, condensed version, whatever you want to do, you're going to notice 2 things. Week 1 and week 3 at home, they look like a contending team, a team that's going to do some real good damage against some teams that have vulnerabilities. Week 2 and week 4 on the road, they look like a completely different team. No energy, no juice, and just mistake after mistake after mistake. This is their 3rd shot on the road to get it figured out, why they can't play well when they're away from Northwest Stadium. And it's a great opportunity. Again, Jayden Daniels homecoming, his return. So hopefully a little bit of that extra juice. I mean, Bobby Wagner's, he's played in SoCal, right? But Bobby Wagner's from the area, et cetera, et cetera. This is an opportunity for them to kind of get that corrected and then come back home for a Monday night football game against the Chicago Bears. We all know what happened last year against the Chicago Bears. So there's going to be plenty of juice in there. That highlight's going to be playing a million times over before week 6 Monday night football arrives. And of course it's Monday night football. And of course the Commanders are wearing the same black uniforms they wore on that night last year, because why not? So this is a huge opportunity for them, man. And this could be the difference between, I don't want to go too deep into the rabbit hole here, but this could be the difference between like a 2-5 start and a 5-2 start. That's how important getting off this road game snide is for the Commanders.
Absolutely, man. And like the thing is you don't want to ever be the get right team, the team that, someone had a bad loss last week, but it's like, okay, now you get the Commanders next week where you can get back on track. And I think it's interesting because of how these teams match up against each other, that I do think it'll be a really good game based on that, even with, both teams having some key injuries. I mean, the Chargers want to feel better about their injury report. Check out the Washington Commanders injury report. And I think that's just to say everybody's dealing with it, right? And for the Chargers, it's like no one's going to feel bad for your offensive line. They're going to attack you and try to feast on that. And for the Chargers, they have to take advantage of some of the Commanders' injuries as well, which is why we have to get into the biggest matchups from this game, including my boy Ladd McConkey going up against one of my draft crushes, Mikey Sainristil. And of course, David Harrison's going to talk about, some of the things that the Commanders have a really good opportunity against, which just scares me really half to death. So we're going to get into all that and more on today's Locked On crossover episode. First, though, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel, because FanDuel is the only place to place your bets. NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer, because new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. The odds are out right now, and they're starting to move in the Commanders' favor. It opened up as a 3-point favorite for the Chargers, which was a little surprising after their output last weekend, knowing that Jayden Daniels is likely going to be starting this game. But the great thing about FanDuel is it's not just betting on who is going to win. There's so much more, like alternative spreads, who will be winning at halftime, and also one of my favorites, anytime touchdown scorers. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. I also need to tell you guys about Mazda, because Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IAHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model, and I think you heard it from David Harrison there. The attention to detail for the Commanders on the road, right? Being able to not make the mistakes. And the Chargers, who had 14 penalties last week on the road. Do you think attention to detail matters? I know that Mazda definitely thinks so. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, David. Well, now it's time to get into some of the biggest matchups here. I already talked about a couple of the ones that I plan on touching on, but I know that yours are really, really good because I've seen them already, and I know what you're going to bring up, and it's what scares me most covering the Chargers. But where do you want to start as far as the matchups you're looking most closely at as we get into this one?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the matchup that I'm not the most confident that Cliff Kingsbury is going to use enough, and that is the Washington Commanders run game. And then their 2 wins, week 1 and week 3, against the New York Giants and against the Las Vegas Raiders. The Washington Commanders ran for over 200 yards in both of those games. Terrifying. Against the Atlanta Falcons, they still ran for a very good amount. I mean, 147 yards against the Atlanta Falcons. That's a pretty good running day, but they went away from it too much. They went away from it too often, and they didn't use it to kind of, one, give their defensive time on the sideline to kind of figure out what was going on their side of things, and they didn't use it to impose a little bit of a dominance on the Atlanta Falcons and kind of take control of the tempo of the game, which I think anytime you're an away team, that is exactly what you want to do as quickly as possible, is take control of the game, do everything you can to take the opposing or take the home crowd out of the game as much as you can. And I know the Chargers aren't known for having the greatest home crowd, but regardless, a home crowd is a home crowd. You want to take them out. 5.9 yards per carry is what the Washington Commanders are averaging on the ground so far. That's the second best yards per carry average as a team through the first quarter of the season. The problem is they're like 17th in rushing attempts per game. And that, to me, that's to be quite frankly, it's ridiculous. And I think that what we need is for Cliff Kingsbury to kind of understand that this is what his team is right now, at least in 2025. I've always looked at the first quarter of the NFL season as a fact-finding mission. Every team is out there trying to find out who they are, figure out who they are. They know who they want to be, but who are you actually in 2025? And then the teams that figure out who they actually are and lean into that are going to be your more successful ones here in the second quarter, into the third quarter of the season. And those who deny who they are and try to force themselves to be something they're not are going to be the ones that continue to struggle. For the Washington Commanders, Cliff Kingsbury, I understand he likes to throw the ball, air raid, all that stuff. But the reality of the air raid offense is actually it's supposed to just use the entirety of the field. Well, the run game, obviously, is part of using the entirety of the field. And when the Washington Commanders do that, they have success in the Las Vegas Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers have shown, as you're going to talk about, that they're a little bit vulnerable to this, specifically on their left side of their defense, where they're ranked 31st in the NFL against the run, going up against that side, allowing 13.33 yards per carry, which is incredible. I had to look at it like 3 times to make sure that I wasn't getting a number wrong. Now, they've only faced 6 runs to that side through 4 games, right? So teams aren't necessarily running to that side on them all that much, so you need a little bit more data. But if I'm Cliff Kingsbury, my team runs really well to the right side. The Chargers don't defend the run very well to their left side. Those 2 things marry up. I'm coming through specifically with Chris Rodriguez to start the game, and I'm going to make the Chargers prove that they can shore up that leak before I go away from them.
And I think the thing is, I mean, first of all, I don't know what kind of offense coordinator wouldn't keep running the football when they're averaging an insane yards per attempt like that. Oh, wait, I saw it exactly last week when Omarion Hampton averaged over 10 yards per carry last week. And guess how many carries he had? 12, which does not feel like nearly enough.
There's a lot of Chargers. Todd Monken in Baltimore is another one. I mean, come on, bro.
Well, and the thing also, too, for me is just like for the Chargers, it went under the radar that they didn't have the best run defense because they got up so quick on teams and teams weren't really able to exploit it. Going into last week, they were allowing 5 yards per carry, which was one of the worst in the league. But teams didn't, it was game flow, right? And some of that 5 yards per carry is because they're up by 10 and allowing, 8-yard, halfback draws and stuff like that because they're not really worried about it. But definitely worried about the Chargers' run defense, especially after last week. Don't pay attention to Cam Scadaboo averaging 3.2 yards per carry because a lot of that was goal line stuffs, and short yardage situations that really skewed the numbers there. Pay attention to the 160 yards that the Chargers gave up on the ground last week. In addition to that, I'm a little worried about Deebo Samuel versus the Chargers secondary. Obviously, you have Derwin James, and I think Derwin James is a great Deebo Samuel matchup, like a guy that, has the athleticism, has the physicality to be able to bring him down, but he's a guy so far this season, 6+ catches in 3 of the 4 games, had 7 catches in each of Jayden's starts to start this year. So he's a guy I'm a little bit worried about. Still a yards after catch monster, still, has forced the most missed tackles by any wide receiver on receptions so far this year. And I mean, a potential running game too, not a wide back like he was, but he still does get the ball every once in a while, and that is threatening too. On the flip side of that, for the Chargers, I'm looking at Ladd McConkey versus Mikey Sainristil. Mikey Sainristil has not had a great season so far this year. Has allowed 5+ catches in 3 straight games, an 84% completion percentage over that span. On the flip side, Ladd McConkey is coming off of his worst game ever. 1 catch on 6 targets, an interception while targeting him, running into his own player, which was not his fault. But it's just been a little off with Ladd McConkey all season. Like, he was clear wide receiver 1 going in. He was clear wide receiver 1 last season. And this week, he gets a matchup. This feels like a get Ladd McConkey right game. We'll talk probably more about that tomorrow on my keys because it feels like they just have to get this dude going. And if the Chargers offense was just a juggernaut, right? And it's just like, well, we don't have to force feed Ladd the ball because we're scoring 35 points a game. That's one thing. But the Chargers have their issues. So for Ladd McConkey not to be more involved in the offense, especially in this matchup with Mikey Sainristil, would be concerning. I think they have to exploit it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head, right? Mikey has not had the greatest start to the season. And a lot of people had really high hopes for him. Last year, he was one of the better rookies on the team. He established himself as a leader in the locker room. And he had a fairly good, I think he was underrated defensive rookie. I think he should have been in the conversation as one of the candidates for defensive rookie of the year. Not necessarily winner, right? But should have got some votes,
though. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was all outside. And that was kind of the question we had on Locked On Commanders all off season long is we love what Mikey did in 2024, but he's moving back inside to the slot in 2025. It's a completely different position. I know they all say cornerback, but it's a completely different position. And so now Mikey is essentially resetting, relearning his NFL game and doing all those things. And it hasn't gone, incredibly smooth right here through the first quarter of the season. Now there's plenty of time for him to get that ship corrected, and a matchup against a guy like Ladd McConkey is a great one to go up against and give him an opportunity to prove himself. Last week, give the Atlanta Falcons credit, man. They put Drake London on Mikey Sainristil and absolutely used that size disadvantage, for Mikey to their advantage. Ladd McConkey's a little bit more Mikey's, speed. Now look, Mikey's
Definitely.
5'8", so pretty much everybody has a size advantage on Mikey Sainristil, but the dude plays like he's 6'2".
Right.
I was fortunate enough to correctly predict that Mikey Sainristil would come up with the first Commanders takeaway of the season. He got an interception off of Michael Penix Jr. last week, so that's good. And I want to see if that's going to snowball into more good play from Mikey Sainristil. So I'm 1,000% watching that matchup for as much as what has happened with Mikey so far at the beginning of the season, but also because I was a big Ladd McConkey fan when he came out of school. So I'm looking forward to my first opportunity to see him play in person.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ladd is the best. The Mikey, I mean, both guys play bigger than their size for sure, but it probably is one of the only size advantages that Ladd McConkey is going to have this season, at least from a pure, height perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think for both those guys, as much as each of these teams has to get right and bounce back, I think both these guys need to bounce back too, and it could go either way. Mikey Sainristil can put him in a blender, and Ladd McConkey is still trying to get back on track, or this could be a setback for Mikey Sainristil as he's adjusting to the slot. But I think that's a matchup that has to be exploited for the Chargers if they're going to get this win, because I think it's a really tough game. But I'm going to tell you exactly why what the Chargers need to do precisely to get this win, and so is David, because I'm getting into 3 keys to victory, 3 things that each of these teams has to do to be able to pull off this big win. So we're talking about all that and more in today's Locked On Crossover episode. First, though, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, because the NFL season is back, and that means you guys can be going to this game with Game Time. I was shocked when I looked at this. Wait until I tell you how little you can get into this game for, because NFL is back. There's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans. I'm sure Jayden Daniels is going to be loving being surrounded by his family with his homecoming, but let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping up at checkout. It's super frustrating, and that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll know that your tickets are always 100% authentic, delivered on time, and at the best price. And the closer it gets to game time, the lower the price on your tickets is going to be. And you know how I know that? Because you can get into SoFi Stadium this weekend as a fan for $31. $31 to watch Jayden Daniels take on Justin Herbert in Los Angeles. I had to do a double take on him. I mean, you can get field level tickets for this one for less than $200. And the price you see is the price that you're actually going to get, which is what makes it that much better. I wish I could go this weekend, because I would absolutely pay much more than $31 to get into it. And there's not a bad seat in that stadium. So Game Time is the absolute best. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. All right, it is this Locked On crossover episode. We have Locked On Chargers with me, Daniel Wade, and Locked On Commanders with David Harrison. We don't get to do this matchup very often, and this is one that feels like it's going to be a really good game, at least in my opinion. I mean, I think both of these teams have their advantages, but I think there are certain things that each of these teams is going to have to do to pull this win off and make sure they're not going on a 2-game skid, because both of our teams are desperately trying to avoid that. But thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen, as all the everydayers do out there. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out Locked On NFL, because they have a double dose for you every day with Tyler the Madman Rowland, and also my guy Tony Wiggins in the barbershop, giving you everything you need to know around the league on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. But we're going to get into what each team needs to do. I want to go back and forth here, David. Let's start with your first key to what you think the Commanders need to do to pull off this victory.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing they need to do, man, is win on the early downs, right? Get 4 yards or more on first down, get 60% of the remaining yards on second down, convert your third downs. The third down offense has been terrible overall. They've had a good game. I think the Las Vegas Raiders game, they converted 50% of their third downs, but overall 33%. Last week against the Atlanta Falcons, 1 for 8. And I'll add a little bit of seasoning to that 1 for 8, that one conversion they had. Marcus Mariota ran the ball for 22 yards off script because the play they designed failed, right? So if you want to be technical, design plays, they were 0 for 8 against the Atlanta Falcons. So they got to get better there. Plus, move the chains, put the ball in the end zone, and it counteracts the Los Angeles Chargers and something that I think they're going to try to do, which is run halfback duo, because the Washington Commanders are going to use a lot of 4-man fronts. And what does
Right.
halfback duo, or what does the duo do? Pushes those defensive linemen out of the way, gets the running back against the linebackers. This is the type of defense that play runs really well against if you can be in that situation. But if the Chargers are playing catch up, you get them away from that ability. You get them passing in obvious situations. And that's where, I don't know, maybe Mikey Sainristil comes up with a second interception of the year.
Oh, I mean, hey, I think that absolutely works on both sides of the ball. I actually went the other direction. I said win the battle of fourth downs. And I'm interested to see what you kind of think about this, because obviously the Commanders, one of the things they were known for was just being insane last year on fourth down. To be exact, 20 out of 23 is what they were on fourth down last year, converted an 87% clip. They've slowed it down a lot more this year, David. Only 5 attempts this year per True Media, 3 out of 5 so far. Is that a Jayden Daniels thing, or is that, because Dan Quinn had more faith in the defense? What do you think has led to them going for it much less?
It's a Matt Gay thing. The Washington Commanders brought in kicker Matt Gay. And the only reason I really knew this, I kind of surprised everybody on the Commanders beat, because here they signed this kicker, and I'm just spitting all these Matt Gay facts, and they're like, you just know this random kicker that the team just signed. Well, Matt Gay was drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I covered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when Matt Gay was there. This dude has a cannon for a leg. Now, truthfully, with all the legs that are going out there today, he really doesn't. He kind of has an average leg today, but last year's kickers, Austin Seibert, Zane Gonzalez, and then the numerous others. They had like half a dozen kickers. What they were all lacking was that distance. They didn't really have the ability to kick a 52-yard or 55-yarder with consistency in the distance. Matt Gay can do that. Now, he's had some issues with accuracy, but as soon as they signed Matt Gay and then they released Zane Gonzalez, so no competition at the kicker position, it was immediately clear to me they don't want to go for it on fourth down as much as they did last year. They went for it as much as they did last year because they also don't want to punt from him close. So your only options are go for it or punt in close. Dan Quinn's not going to do that. But this year, that's why, because they have faith in Matt Gay's leg to kick it in from those distances, and they're going to allow him the opportunity to do that.
No, I really wanted that insight. I'm glad you said that, but it also feels like a game that could come down to a couple fourth downs. Chargers have had some bad moments on fourth down so far this year, but also had a moment last game that kept them in the game by getting a stop on 4th and goal and being able to give the Chargers offense one more chance to tie the game. But it does feel like a game that could absolutely be decided by that. Chargers have only gone for it 3 times on 4th down this year, which is a Jim Harbaugh thing more than anything, because obviously, it's probably a Cameron Dicker thing too, because they have the most accurate kicker in NFL history. Definitely plays a part of that. Where would you go for your second key to victory for the Commanders this week?
Yeah, I think they got to generate pressure with a 4-man rush. Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn, they're known as aggressive defensive play callers and all this stuff, and they certainly are. They've only been blitzing about 27% of the time, which is about middle of the pack in the NFL when it comes to blitzing. And I think the reason they're doing it is because if you watch the Packers game, if you watch the Falcons game, honestly, even if you watch the Raiders game, Trey Tucker went off against the Washington Commanders. Now, granted, they lost, so it kind of got lost in the mix a little bit, but the coverage has not been great, and there's been blown assignments week in, week out, opportunities. The question or the problem comes in when you've got pressure on your quarterback, right? Russell Wilson was running for his life in week 1. Geno Smith was running for his life in week 3 outside of a few big plays. So they weren't able to take advantage of it. Jordan Love and Michael Penix Jr. were standing in clean pockets, so they spot the blown coverage. They hit the blown coverage. Bijan Robinson, 59 yards later, is getting tackled right at the goal line, things like that. So that's really the big thing, is the more you have to blitz to get pressure on the quarterback, the less you have in coverage, obviously. So you need to, given the weaknesses they've already had in the secondary, you need to be able to get home with 4 rushers, or else you're going to have to start bringing 5 or 6 guys, and that's only going to weaken your secondary even more.
Yeah, and Justin Herbert can play against the blitz, right? And the thing is, you probably don't need to bring more than 4. I mean, per Nate Tice, 50 pressures on 95 dropbacks the last 2 weeks for Justin Herbert. My key is keep Justin Herbert healthy, because the easiest way to lose this game is not having Justin Herbert out on the field. And Herbert has been hit close to 40 times over the past 3 weeks. It's just unsustainable. And look at Jayden Daniels, right? Like, you can't let these guys get hit that much, and he's getting hit at almost an unprecedented rate. The Chargers have issues on their offensive line. They have to keep Herbert, at least give him a chance, keep him healthy, get him through the game if they want to have a chance at all. And I think the last thing for me, get off the field in the red zone. That's another one on both sides of things. I mean, the one thing the Commanders have done consistently since the beginning of last year is score touchdowns in the red zone. If you can keep them out of the end zone, if they get that far, which I think they're going to be able to move the ball, that is a great thing for you. And you have kind of two juggernauts on each side. I mean, the Chargers, one of the best red zone defenses versus one of the best red zone offenses. Commies 77.8% touchdown rate per True Media. Chargers only allowing 30% of opponents who get into the red zone to score a touchdown. Last week held the Giants to 2 of 5 and got a huge fourth down stop, especially since the offense for the Chargers put their defense in a terrible situation, giving it to the Giants twice inside the 5-yard line. So feels another game, fourth down in the red zone. The team that has to, kick field goals might be the team that ends up losing this game. David, where do you want to go for your last key to victory here?
Yeah, I mean, the last one is we've already kind of talked about it, pretty extensively, which is why I left it for the last one. It's establish the run game. Again, it's the one that I think is the most obvious path to the Washington Commanders trying to set the tone in Los Angeles, but it's also the one that I'm not 100% confident Cliff Kingsbury is going to lead into.
Absolutely, and I think the thing is, too, is like Jayden Daniels running the football absolutely terrifies me. Jackson Dart, Patrick Mahomes, Bo Nix, everybody who's run against the Chargers, the big rushing numbers they've given up, a lot of those yards have come from opposing quarterbacks. The Chargers have to rein that in. They have to be able to contain Jayden Daniels in this one, plus be able to do enough against those running backs in the scheme that they're going up against. And I think for them, the biggest thing is going to be, you're not going to win every battle. You're not going to get to, you're not going to stop their run all day. What you can do, though, David, make a couple of those plays. Get a tackle for loss for 3. Get them behind the sticks, right? And that's what it has to be, especially if you can't just hope for massive improvements for your run defense, is you got to make enough plays to get them off schedule and not use it to just bash your brains in. I think that's really what it's going to come down to, is just the Chargers have to also be able to establish the run. Omarion Hampton was awesome, kind of a coming out party for him last week. And just like the Mikey Sainristil interception, nobody cares because you lost the game. And that's what this one could end up coming down to. But that's going to wrap things up for us today. Locked On Chargers, Locked On Commanders. Daniel Wade here from Locked On Chargers, and David Harrison every single day with the Locked On Commanders, because it is your team every day. And we appreciate all the everydayers out there. David is going to be at this game. David Drogemeyer is also going to be at this game. So if you see either one of them, make sure you guys say what's up. It's so great to have those interactions with fans. David Drogemeyer going this week for his birthday. I'm hoping for a connection between the two Davids as well. Yeah. But man, we're not doing predictions today. I think it's going to be a hell of a game. I really do think it's going to be a great game. I'm super excited to see what ends up happening. And I think each of these teams can make a statement on Sunday when these two teams match up. But make sure you're back here for the Friday episodes of Locked On Chargers and Locked On Commanders. But thank you for checking out this episode of Locked On Crossover, because it is your team every day.